We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
Hey, welcome to the Supernatural Hour. I'm your host, Raven.
This is Rogue.
This is Doc.
I'm Emmett.
And I'm Chad.
And we have a special guest with us today. His name is Brian James, and he's from Global United Paranormal Foundation. Brian, would you like to say hello?
Oh, hello.
All right, there we go. So our main topic today, it's been a while since we've done a serial killer, and you might say to yourself, hello, paranormal podcast, why are we talking about serial killers? Well, this is kind of a...
Twofer.
It's a twofer, because not only is it a serial killer, but her house is also crazy haunted. Based on the fact of what all happened there, it's not going to be a super surprise.
I feel like those two things probably go together.
Hand in hand.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Sometimes when we've done serial killers in the past, it's been a little stretch to try to find that paranormal bend. This one does not have a stretch. So it's Delphine LaLaurie. And, you know, in Utah, if you ask me the creepiest place in Utah, Tooele. All the creepiest stuff is in Tooele. Asylum 49 is in Tooele.
Magna's out that way. There's some other places.
Right? Magna, I mean, that just speaks for itself. Love you, Magna. But, so...
Benson Grist Mill. There's some cool places out that way.
Yes, well, and the Blizzard.
And the Blizzard. Blizzard House.
Our Blizzard House is out there. So, Delphine...
And that's where we got that rock.
And the rock.
The rock house with the weird...
The possessed rock, yeah. So, in the United States, I think one of the creepy places is New Orleans, or Narlands. If
Narlands?
But, yeah, this is in Delphine and her creepy house.
I'm just going to say New Orleans the whole time, just to irritate people.
Way to be proper.
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Yeah, so Delphine, let's get into it.
Well, everything's haunted there anyway, so we're off to a good start.
Right. Okay, and just for the record, I usually type up my notes. I hand wrote them today. And this might be really exciting. I don't know half of what I wrote, so yay.
You sound more and more like me all the time. I like it.
I know.
I feel like I'm home here.
It's like, hang on, I don't know this word. Okay, Rogue and Emmett found a soundboard, and so there might be some intermittent random
That was the
cheering.
yay part I just heard from the children.
Right? I was trying.
Doc's looking at me like, what the heck was that?
We're hosting a rave after the podcast tonight. So.
Yeah.
With 27 4-year-olds. Okay, so Delphine LaLaurie. I'm sorry, that is fun to say. And as we were watching some YouTube videos, some of the hosts on those YouTube videos were like, "This is a fun name to say."
I noticed she went by like 5 or 6, 7 different names too.
Right. Well, she was married 3 times.
Every good serial killer has at least a few aliases. I mean, come on.
Right.
And a number of marriages.
Right.
Didn't work out.
Well,
Disappeared.
I don't know. We'll get into this a little more as we get into the podcast, but she didn't start having issues until she was married to her 3rd husband, and then it makes you wonder about her first 2.
Yeah, but the first 2 also died.
I know.
It's always the 3rd one.
It's like, anyway, we'll get into that.
That's bad news for me.
God, I'm the first one in my way.
You're the first one, Brian, so you're safe? Or no, you're... If you die mysteriously...
Unless I get arsenic.
So Delphine was born, Delphine McCarthy, I've seen several different dates. I've seen 1787. I've seen 1775. I've seen March 17th, and I've seen March 19th. So regardless, her birthday was just a couple days ago.
March 19th, 1787.
Yeah. So I saw a myriad of different things. But basically, she was born in New Orleans when it was Spanish Louisiana. And her family was high-profile European Creole, as I think is how they described her family.
And quite wealthy.
Quite wealthy, quite high-powered. She actually had an uncle that was trying to read my handwritten notes, like a governor of one of the provinces. Okay. And her cousin was actually the mayor of New Orleans at one point. So very high.
The aristocracy then of New Orleans at the time.
Yeah, it's, very high social status. Like we said, she actually married, I think it was a Spanish fellow.
Yeah, and he
first.
was like a major. He's in the military, major or general.
And they had a daughter, and then he died about 4 years later. They weren't married for very long. And then she married again, and I think that second husband was French.
Mm-hmm.
And they had...
And he also had quite a bit of property.
Mm-hmm.
And, they had between them a couple of plantations and a number of homesteads and things like that. And what was it? Something like, between the two of them, something like 60 slaves.
Yes, quite a few slaves. And then they had 4 children together. They had 5 children together. So she had a total of 6 children. And then spouse number 2 passed away. And I think they had been married for about 8 years, give or take. And then several years later, he died in 1816. And then she remarried a fellow named Dr. Leonard LaLaurie in 1825. And they are the ones that, moved to New Orleans and built this fabulous house. I have a little bit of house envy. It's a beautiful home. Have you seen this?
3
home?
stories on the corner. And
Very good house.
And from the outside, you only see, it looks like just kind of a building that goes up 3 stories. But in one area, you can see the doorway, and it has an inner courtyard with gardens and everything and terraces in so you can overlook the garden. Very cool.
Right. And it looks a little different now than it did originally because there was a fire. We'll get to the fire. But still, it's a beautiful home. And I would love to live there except for the curse.
And there's been
too.
a number of different owners and what it's been used for, a number of different things too.
If I remember right, wasn't she known for selling slaves as well?
Probably. She was quite the lady.
Yeah, her slaves, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit after some things that happened. Her slaves did go on the market. I don't know that she was selling them or the government was requiring her to get rid of some.
That's what I had read, at least at one point, that she had some slaves that she was accused of improperly treating the slaves that she owned. And
you have to get pretty bad to be accused of improperly treating slaves.
Yeah,
so
by definition.
Now we have to remember
slaves.
that at that time, slavery was normal. We can't judge it by how we view things today. At the time, it was okay to have slaves. It was legal. They had laws in place to prevent
mistreatment, gross mistreatment.
And when she married this third husband, I think he was involved too.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to have somebody from the government actually went to their house twice to say, you got to lay off.
Yeah, the first time the accusation was made, they got a clean bill of health on it. The guy came back and said, no, everything's okay and there's not an issue. Reports continued to circulate, and they came back again and found a number of things. And
it was legal to discipline your slaves. They just couldn't go above and beyond a certain point. Think of it like your children. You can discipline your children. You just can't, beat them to bloody pulps. DCFS gets a little
They'd be there. They'd show up.
So when you chain your cook to the stove.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's bad. Okay.
That's bad.
Okay.
So one of the instances, one of the stories is that Delphine, and apparently she was a very beautiful woman. And when I say apparently, I mean you can see pictures of her online, and she's pretty. And a
socialite. I mean, major parties at this home, major things going on. It was a social gathering place in New Orleans.
Right. And before I get into the story about this little slave that she had, she put on a very good public appearance. In public, she was very nice to her slaves. In public, she was, very respectful.
She was a model citizen.
As most serial killers do, right?
You don't go around whipping people in public.
Yeah, got your BTKs that are like, I'm a scout leader, and I go to church and do all these great things. Or
Something that's really fascinating about where I live, Spokane, Washington, the Green River Killer actually has a house up on 34th Avenue on the South Hill.
Oh wow.
Well,
So do you drive past it like every week?
when I was doing tours with Two Dog City Tours, we'd have a serial killer night and drive around Spokane, and we've had our couple of serial killers here.
Yeah.
Ted Bundy up in that area for a while.
Yeah, we've got Ted Bundy.
Yeah,
So did
Ted
Washington,
Bundy
right?
was actually here for a while.
Yeah.
And
We share that in common.
Seems like everybody had Ted Bundy.
everybody's
Florida.
had a little taste of Ted Bundy.
Yep, he got around. So back to Delphine. She was having her hair brushed by a little, they say about 12-year-old little slave girl that was in the home. And as she's brushing Delphine's hair, she caught a snarl and, kind of pulled her hair a little bit. And Delphine lost it. And as the story goes, grabbed a whip and chased this girl. And the girl just, is running away. And there's actually eyewitness accounts from neighbors that said they saw this little girl just flying across the yard. And I'm assuming flying is like running really fast.
Well, she went up onto the 3rd floor
And then
and got on the roof.
And then they went up, climbed up, got on the roof. And they don't know if she was pushed, if she just fell because she's running. But she fell off the roof, and they said that behind her, Delphine was chasing her with a whip.
Right, she was trying to avoid being whipped.
And they said this neighbor that saw this happen said that they saw the people pick this little girl up, and they said the way her body reacted when they picked her up, she said, I think every bone in her body broke.
Yeah, 3 stories.
And then that evening, this same neighbor witnessed them carry the body out, dig a hole in the backyard, and just buried her in a hole in the backyard.
So, Doc, a 3-story drop onto pavers.
Yeah, probably hurt.
Probably hurt.
I would say probably. No, yeah, it sounds like a lethal fall at that point.
Yeah.
Lots of broken bones, I'm sure. I've seen a few.
So
Raven.
Oh, go ahead.
Did-
Yes.
Did you know that American Horror Season 3 is based on that mansion in this story?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of things based off this crazy lady.
Yeah.
I've seen one of the ghost shows has been there too.
Yeah, I think it was Ghost Adventures.
Ghost Adventures
Has been there.
Uh-huh.
The house, when you look at the picture of it, is like classic French Quarter style house, from what I could tell.
Oh, it's
We talked a little bit
beautiful.
about it, but I could imagine, you're going to fall, and there's not much that's going to catch you until you hit the ground.
Till
'Cause
you hit the
there's
pavement on the
it's,
sidewalk.
It's blocky, but it has all that iron work and all that stuff around it. But
Well, there's the ironwork now, but if you look at some of the pictures they were showing
historic
on YouTube,
ones?
there wasn't that ironwork.
That ironwork balcony wasn't there.
really,
That's newer.
that was a new edition. Interesting.
Yeah,
So-
new, probably.
New,
the-
like 1800s. Yeah,
1890s.
very new. Very new.
Right. So, so going back to Chad, when you said about the slave that was chained to the stove, that was one of the things that Delphine would do. And this one particular, I think it was in 1834, Delphine had chained this 70-year-old slave to the stove.
And she was the cook.
She was the cook, and rather than be punished, because punishment meant going upstairs, and when slaves went upstairs, you never saw them again. Ever.
Literally, there were, you'll probably talk about it a little bit later with the fire and what they
Right.
found after the fire. You're going to cover that?
Yeah, we'll get
Okay.
there. So rather than be punished by the LaLauries, this cook started, because she's chained to the stove, she started the house on fire because she'd rather die by killing herself with fire than be taken upstairs unpunished. That's how bad it was.
If I remember right, that fire was in April of, was it 1930s?
Yes, it was 1834
1834.
when that happened.
Not 100 years off, but that's all right.
I think I said 1934. You were right. So
I meant 18, I think, maybe. Yeah, something like that.
yeah, so they'd been to the house several times with some complaints of gross mistreatment of the slaves. We touched on this a little bit. She actually had her slaves taken away but her very influential family was able to
Buy most of them back?
get them back to her, and so they came back. Somewhere online I read that she actually freed 2 of her slaves, but they didn't talk much about that. They used some fancy word. I didn't know what it was. I actually
2
had
out
to
of
look it
60-ish?
up. Yeah.
Not good odds.
But
Not good odds.
after this fire, they actually went in and searched the house, and they went upstairs to this attic where when slaves went, they never came back. And that's where this whole story just gets really violent and really sad. They went up. Yeah. They went up there and they found mutilated slaves. They found slaves that had, big iron bands around their neck, and they were chained to the wall. Some of these bands around the neck were spiked, so they couldn't move their head. They found slaves hanging with their limbs broken. Those are the ones that are documented. So there's some other stories that they think that these other stories might be
Embellished.
embellished. Nice.
Nice choice of word, Chad.
Well,
Nice choice
I'm
of
a writer.
timing.
What can I say?
But some of the stories say that there were slaves that had open head wounds. And that there was one where
They're doing, their homemade lobotomies.
Right.
right.
With dull, what I understand, like basically dull rods, basically. This was not a surgical thing. This was a torture thing.
Right. Now, Mr. LaLaurie was a doctor.
Physician.
He was a physician, so he could have been
Participating
experimenting.
in some of this, yeah.
Yeah, experimenting and seeing what the human body can put up with. That was part of it.
He was
She
actually,
had access to all the good tools.
That's right.
and he was actually questioned, earlier about the treatment of the slavery, and basically what he said was, you just need to mind your own business, keep your nose out of my business, which I thought, well, that's a very callous answer.
Oh, yeah.
So some of the stories were open wounds with maggots, festering in the wounds. They said that they would break the bones, let them heal unnaturally, break them again. They did say that there was one gal that her bones had been broken and set in such grotesque ways to reheal that she looked like a crab when she walked. They said there was a man that had a hole in his head and they had sewn a wooden spoon into his head with the handle sticking out so they could stir up his brains. It almost makes me sick to talk about this.
Yeah, I definitely lost my appetite for dinner. That's
Yep.
for sure.
So they said that they found one of the slaves who had passed away. While doing an autopsy, they had found human and animal feces in her intestines, and her mouth had been sewn shut.
Within feces in the mouth and then sewn shut.
Yep. Sounds like torture.
Yeah, and so they took these slaves out, and they actually took these tortured slaves and put them in prison, not because they did anything bad, but just someplace to put them.
Someplace nice.
Someplace better. Yeah, prison.
Oh, that's so sad. But they said that they put these prisoners on display, and it wasn't to make fun or belittle these slaves. It was to show what had happened.
The cruelty.
Show the cruelty of these people. And they said within just a couple of days, they had 4,000 people go through and view what had happened to these poor slaves. And it enraged the community, understandably so. I would be enraged.
And then what would you do if you were enraged?
Well, I would storm her house and burn it down.
And is that what happened?
Yes.
I wonder. Yeah.
Yes, they looted it. They took everything out. They looted the house. They burned it.
Vigilante justice.
And her husband and her left New Orleans and went to Paris.
Yep, they disappeared.
Never to go back to New Orleans.
No one knows quite where she's buried. Some say that she's buried in France. Some people say... Someone said that they found like a little plaque kind of buried in an old cemetery that says she's there. And it's like, is she buried there? Did someone just put up a marker, like a memorial?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't go too fancy on that one.
Yeah, not draw a
But
lot of attention.
she got away scot-free.
Pretty much. Well, on this earth.
Never held to account for it. Yeah. Really.
I think she'll account for it.
The
in
karma?
my
Is that what
opinion.
you're saying? Karma?
I think God won't be very happy about it.
So there's ample reason for all of the paranormal.
Yeah.
Occurrences.
So there's some pretty good reasons for paranormal stuff going on there.
And there's some interesting YouTube videos about it, about people that have lived in the house since. There's one of a woman that was there when she was a child in the 70s. And, and the things that have gone on there. And she has since gone back and kind of tried to make her peace there. And she's not having it. It didn't really work. It kind of wigs her out. But just different things that go on in the house and the fields. I think now you can, it's been made into apartments, and I think since then you can actually.
The last I heard, it's a private residence, and they don't let anybody.
Is that what it is now? Mm-hmm. I was wondering because I don't know within how long, but previously it looked like it was like a bread and breakfast kind of thing where they could go.
It's actually after they burned it, the mob. They, just sat empty for years and years, but then it finally got rebuilt, and it was because it's in a pretty prominent place. It's on a corner. If you're familiar with New Orleans, which I'm not, I've never been there, it's 1140 Royal Street.
Right.
Just right in the French Quarter.
And I have been there. I've been by there. I didn't realize the significance of that specific building, but I've been down in that area, and I know they talked about it, as we went by on the New Orleans tour. They mentioned it.
That's definitely on my bucket list is New Orleans.
Yeah, so when I saw the picture, it's like, yeah, I've seen that.
So it served as a home for wayward boys, and I'm sure that's going to draw in some energy. It was an apartment building. It was a furniture store. In 2007, Nicolas Cage bought it.
Well, that's scary.
And, the funny thing is it says he managed his
Ghost
finances.
Rider?
I know. One website said he managed his finances as well as he acted, so it actually got foreclosed on him.
Ouch. That was a burn. Oh.
I didn't say it.
Nicolas
I just read
Cage.
it. So
National Treasure was fine.
it actually wasn't too bad. So, it got foreclosed, and now it's a private residence. And so it says tourists are not permitted inside. So after kind of some of the carnage, they actually unearthed 2 bodies. One was buried, and one had been thrown into an old well.
And this is more recently?
I think this was...
when they were doing reconstruction on the place.
Yeah, this would have been in the 1800s.
Only like 100 and something years
because they
ago.
did
Very
also
recent.
find a lot of skeletons in the floorboards back in the day also.
Yep.
Going like John Wayne Gacy style.
Yeah, and so some of the ghost stories that have gone on is they say that a lot of people that have been there through the years, whether it was the home for boys or apartments, there were a lot of stories of hearing moaning, hearing screams. Inside the mansion, people heard the dragging of chains, scratching on the walls, which makes sense considering what's going on there. They also said when it was happening, people outside would hear, screaming and groaning too, but things were actually happening then, which is why the authorities got called in. Many, many people have said that they have seen a woman with long red hair standing in various areas of the mansion glaring at them, and Delphine actually had long red hair. She was a redhead. I think her father was Irish and her mother was French, so she had that Irish fiery red hair. When it was apartments, this would have been in the 1870s, and a lot of dock workers lived in these apartments. And there was a story of a man, a dock worker. He came home, and he went to go upstairs to go to his apartment, but he says and just in his words, there was a big black man that was chained to the stairway and standing in front of the stairway. And this dock worker said, hey, move, I need to, get up to my apartment. And the guy wouldn't move. And, there's a discussion, wouldn't move. And the dock worker went to push this man out of the way so he could go home. And his hands just just
Went right through him.
Went right through. Got cold chills, and then this man was gone. And so that was kind of frightening. It was a girls' school for quite some time, and at the time it was a girls' school, dozens and dozens and dozens of accounts of these girls getting pinched, hit, and scratched. And when they were asked, who did this, the answer was always that woman.
That woman.
That woman was the answer that they would give them. There was a gal we watched on a YouTube video who, I think she lived in the area, and she said that one night she was walking past the building and she saw a little girl sitting up on the roof. Probably Leah, that was the name of the little 12-year-old that was brushing her hair. And this lady won't walk past that building at night anymore. She refuses to walk past it.
I'd be out there with a camera every night if I saw that.
Right? I know, I'd be like, what?
That's because you're
Come
all
back,
weirdos.
come back.
Running over there as they're running away.
Did you just call us a weirdo?
Yeah,
Okay,
pretty
awesome.
much. Just because we're all a bunch of weirdos. Anyone who listens to this podcast, you got to be a little bit weird, right?
That's okay. We'll take it.
Those people who go running in and wanting to
Not
get
the worst
photos.
thing I've ever been called.
We'll see.
Me either.
We're the ones that are like,
I'm just owning it.
there's a demon in that room. That's where I'm going.
Cool, let's go.
Hey, you got to be a weirdo to do stuff like that. That's all I'm saying.
So oddly enough, and I know this will surprise everybody here, but it's considered a cursed building. Is that a shocker?
What?
Interesting.
No way.
And just, besides the stuff that went on there, or because of the stuff that went on there, they say that all the owners of the building have had some sort of bad thing happen to them. They say mostly bad financial luck, but they've
Nicolas
also...
Cage.
Exactly, because apparently his
Place
financial
had a lot of
prowess
plumbing
Was as good as his acting.
was as good as his acting.
Perfect.
Nick, if you're listening, we love you.
Except for Raising Arizona. That was a terrible movie.
It was awesome.
No, that was the worst movie ever. Okay.
Nacho Libre.
That is the best movie ever.
See what I mean, guys?
Weirdo.
Back to the house. Other owners have had bad health issues or they've gone insane. So it's an amazing house. I would love to own it, but not with all this stuff, all the baggage. So Rogue, I had a list, which you will appreciate this list.
We got more lists?
list?
This is like 3 times in a row.
Well, this isn't
Yeah.
a numbered list. It's just interesting.
It's not the top 32 of something.
No. There are no... You guys are rude.
Aww.
I still love
I'm
you.
sorry.
That's okay. I'm just
Or
teasing.
Raven's Mirror Rules.
Yeah. 17
Said
rules
with
about
said with
marriage.
affection. Yeah.
Hey, I remember Chad having a list of rules that we had to pass around and take turns reading.
I know, wasn't that awesome?
So don't give me
Oh,
crap
yeah.
about this. Okay, no, this is just stuff in life based off of this wonderful lady. You ready?
Not a list, but in bullet point format.
It's not ordered.
You
guys-
can enforce them in any order.
You guys are fired. Okay. I guess this wax museum is now closed. I don't know if it's closed because of COVID or if wax museums just aren't a thing anymore. But the local wax museum that used to be there in New Orleans.
In New Orleans? New Orleans?
Had
New Orleans.
we have
Always
no
one in the crowd.
Yeah, we have no listeners anymore. Okay, we are talking to ourselves at this point. They had a LaLaurie exhibit, which in this wax museum exhibit, it displayed kind of like if you'd gone to the prison to see these slaves.
Ew.
Yeah, they had an exhibit, the wax museum.
Sounds dark.
So she has been the character in many horror movies and books and board games, and just a few. There's a board game.
Board games.
Board games.
Torture
You're
House, the
kidding.
board game. You're like,
Yeah, no. So the board game is called Evil Baby Orphanage.
Oh.
I
Is that Hasbro too?
yeah, I was gonna say, they make the damn Ouija board. I mean, why not?
So Evil Baby Orphanage. She's a main character in that. So if you need an idea for a Christmas present, there you go. Amazon, I'm sure.
Send it to me.
Yeah, I'm looking that up.
What, Brian? Sorry, I think we talked over you.
I said, send it to me.
I know.
That'd be a fun game.
I'm actually intrigued. I might look it up. I think Doc's looking it up as we speak.
Yep.
So there's a book by Martin Cage with a K, no relation to Nicholas. It's written in 2015 called Demoness, and that's based off of Delphine. Emma, I think you mentioned this, but Kathy Bates played her in 2013, the third season of American Horror Story.
Rogue did, yeah.
Rogue did. Someone did.
She's amazing. She's just an amazing actress.
And then there's a computer game called Dead Time Stories. She's the main character in that. And there were probably, this list that I found online, there were probably 15 other things. I just wrote down a handful.
It's not available on Amazon,
Okay.
probably because, Secret Hitler's on there. Come on. We can't do Evil Baby Orphanage on Amazon, too?
Probably
Check
eBay.
on Etsy.
It's on eBay. You can find it on eBay.
How much is it?
$14.99 for the...
Is it like a card game? What is it?
it
board game?
looks like there's like an expansion pack.
Open
I'll dig into
box.
this. I'll dig into this.
Okay, we'll get more information. Hang on. So
New old stock.
one last
$14.99.
$14.99, and you too can play Evil Orphanage,
Yeah.
Baby Orphanage. Okay, so last thing about Delphine is I kind of wonder, her first two husbands died. Did she kill them, or did they just die because it was the late 1700s and
It was the thing to do.
well, it's still the thing to do, but younger back then, right? Or was this something that she was just inclined to do but didn't realize it until she married the third husband? And it sounds like the third husband was in on it. Why isn't he as vilified as she is? Did he introduce her to some stuff and then she just ran with it? Because when she married him, when this started happening, she was somewhere between 42 and 50, depending on when her actual birth year was. So she'd gone quite a while before she got too infamous. So I don't know. She's an interesting lady, and I'm glad I will not be her at Judgment Day.
All right. I found the premise of Evil Baby Orphanage.
Okay, let's hear it.
So you are a nanny, and you go back in time to prehabilitate evil people as babies. And your job is to turn them all into ballerinas and accountants and things. And you
not,
try to make
not serial killers.
You try to make your opponents' babies turn into serial killers. So I'm assuming
no
Delphine
pressure.
LaRue is probably a baby in that game. And you got to try to keep her from becoming a serial killer. It's a card game.
Oh.
So you can play that and then go right to Cards Against Humanity.
Perfect.
Okay.
We need to buy that.
Date
thing.
night. Figured out.
Someone was smoking a little too much pot when they came up with that idea.
We're going to time travel, prehabilitate murderers. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Combination of horror movies and pot. That hits it right on the head.
That's got to be it.
Well, we just found this game on eBay, so we're going to order it. We're gonna play it.
It might be
We're
fun.
making the plan now.
Okay, got to invite me.
What a good team activity.
That's right.
All right.
That was
I
an
wanna be there
interesting topic.
virtually.
That's right, man. Come join us.
Heck yeah.
That was
We'll zoom
a
in.
Yeah, when you're in Utah, we'll go to Asylum 49 and we'll play
Evil Baby Orphanage.
All right.
Yeah. we
Not a
will.
sponsored statement there, by the way.
Right.
If you want to sponsor us, though,
Brian, thanks for coming. We
Yeah.
appreciate having you. And again, touch again on your group name real quick.
Most definite. It's a Global United Paranormal Foundation. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and something called The Clapper.
Okay.
the Clapper.
I've never heard of the Clapper, but I'm going to look it up.
It's kind of a toss-up between TikTok and Instagram.
Oh, you know what? I have heard of that, actually. I have. Okay, I lied. I've heard of it. All right, well, thank you again, and stay spooky, my haunty friends.
I love you, Nicholas.
Have a good one.
See you next time.
Hey, have a good night.
one.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright by Advanced Paranormal Services.